Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. I got a great guest. His name is Marvin and last name is Karlow, Karlow. He's with a company called Raincatcher. We're going to talk about a few things that I believe are so important to your business. We're going to start out by talking about, working in your business or working on your business, but we're going to do it in a different way. When's the time that you really should be focused in your business, working in it? And when's the time where you want to be able to work on your business? So it's a confusion point for a lot of people. And so we're going to talk about the timing of that and the expertise on and around that. Marvin's a great guy. He's built several companies at this point, and now is a advisor M&A firm with a national brokerage on and around when companies are going to exit. So that the second half of our interview is going to be specifically on that, on the process of selling, why most people are leaving millions or tens of millions of dollars on the table when they sell their business. So get a pen and paper. This is a good masterclass for you. Write it all down. Those of you who want to increase your EBITDA, you want to increase your revenues, decrease your expenses, increase that EBITDA in your company, because when you do that, your company valuation goes up and you have more cash flow on hand. In the process, we're putting systems and processes in there and making the company run better, lowering your stress as an owner. If you're interested in that, reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. That's doug@CEO, plural on sales, plural on strategies.com. Let's go talk to Marvin right now. Again, get a pen and paper out. You're going to love this episode. Hey, Marvin, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Thanks so much for being here on the show today.
Doug, thank you so much for having me. It is really an honor to be on your show.
Oh, the honor's mine, sir. I was so excited to have you on because you went from, let's just say, an executive's job to a struggling business purchase.
Yes.
And then you were able to take that struggling business and turn it up. I think it was to $21 million you guys built it to, if I remember correctly.
Yes,
so what type of business was it, firstly?
Believe it or not, it was a metal finishing business. Primarily what we did was powder coating. We did some plating as well, but just, people say they love dirty businesses. This is kind of the quintessential dirty business.
So is it called anodizing, if I remember correctly?
Anodizing's for aluminum. Yes, sir.
Oh, that's cool. So when my father owned an electric motor machinery repair shop,
yes, sir.
And we used to go into companies that were doing exactly what you are explaining. And I remember, walking in and smelling all the chemicals, that were coming out of the, and since we used to work on their industrial machinery, I also remember grabbing 550 volts above a vat of that stuff one time. And so it did wake me up. I promise. So some of you listeners, maybe that's partly why I'm a little nuts, but the grabbing electricity, but it was an amazing business. I was like, man, they used to like chrome plate, like bumpers and all kinds of things. That was wonderful. Okay, so a dirty business, certainly a dirty business, and it was struggling, and you got it to go from there to $21 million. I mean, there's a story there, and I'd like to kind of capture that story. What do you think some of the success points were, or some of the like, oh no type moments were? Let's start with the success points. So struggling. You probably found some way to make it not struggle, obviously, to move to the 21 million. So what were the kind of the things that happened in the business?
Well, so, I was a corporate executive. I had a business partner. Thank God for him. We would not have survived without his expertise. He was a small business owner in his past, and we were good friends. We partnered up, and we went kind of the traditional route of using an SBA loan to buy a business that was on the market. That business was doing, honestly reasonably well. And then several years later, we got involved in another one that was struggling, and then ultimately merged those two businesses together. But I was kind of the traditional burned out at my corporate executive job, um, and wanted to change, and uh, so sort of had a moment of insanity and bought a business, and fortunately it worked out pretty well for us.
The old wish, be careful what you wish for thing.
Well, it's definitely a be careful what you wish for thing. And then I think the number one lesson for me is, man, you've just got to be able to, you got to be willing to do whatever it takes. You,
That's wonderful. So,
you,
what is that though, Marvin? Like a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, that sounds bravado," but it's not bravado. It's like you just got to get in there and do what?
man, there's all the cliches, burning the ships, or
Yep.
your back's against the wall, or whatever it is. But I mean, you mentioned, electric motor repair. Like, I think the second failure we had in the business was literally this 30 horsepower, electric motor that fried,
Yep.
and it's bolted into 27 things, and
Yep.
you're going to be lying down for a week while you extract this thing and fix it and put it back. So how do you get that week-long job done in a day? Like, because you don't have a week. I mean, that's just small business ownership.
Yep.
And if you come into it with any level of pride whatsoever, it's just not going to go well.
And here's the thing, I I appreciate you saying this because so many people they go, "Oh, 21 million, man, that, that's awesome, right?" But they don't see all of the fun and struggles that go along with getting a company to that point. And a lot of people think like, "Oh, well, that movie made $500 million." Well, there were probably 4 or 5 failures in that process before that movie actually came out. So analogous to a business, you mentioned the electric motors. I remember one time, so I lived by the seashore, and we had this amusement park, and they had this ride called the Himalaya, and it would take people around, and it was 4th of July weekend, which is huge here, because it's freezing here normally, but summertime's like when everything happens, right? And there were 4 electric motors that powered this Himalaya. It was just a ride people loved. And we get a call. It's on a Friday. All 4 motors have burnt out. These are Italian made motors. They can't get them. We're losing $10,000 an hour, right? And what are we going to do? And believe it or not, my father's business, we worked all weekend long. In 2 days, we got all 4 motors rewound back on the hill. I mean, they lost money, but they saved the weekend too at the same time.
Right.
So when your motor's out in this, we'll just call it's really kind of like a manufacturing facility in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a manufacturing facility for sure. It's what it is.
and when that's happening, you're hemorrhaging funds because you're not making any money. You're
And
just sitting.
there's no way to make it back. I mean, we would chat all the time about the fact that, look, if we lose an hour, there's no getting that hour back.
Right.
Like, it's not coming back. And to your point about working the weekend, the business that we bought that was, or that we got involved in, that definitely was a turnaround. I mean, it was hemorrhaging cash when we got involved in it, and we'd gotten it to a pretty, an okay spot, but we were still, very vulnerable. And same kind of deal. Somebody literally just walked in our front door on a Friday morning and spoke to the receptionist, and asked to speak to the owner. Um, and they brought this guy back, and he introduced himself, and he was from this huge company in town, right? Huge manufacturing company, work that they do, work for the airlines. And he basically said, this other vendor is holding our parts hostage.
Oh gosh.
I need you to, they've actually lost their certification, so they can't do our work, but they won't give us back our parts. Can you help me go get our parts? And then we need them all completed by Monday morning, or we're going to be lying down.
Wow.
And that's how we won their business. Like from 10:30 a.m. on a Friday morning until 8 a.m. Monday, we were all hands on deck, and we got their work done, and they had parts to fire their lineup, first shift Monday morning. So that's what I mean. You just do whatever it takes as a small business owner.
Yeah, and that's, well, as a successful business owner, that's what we do, right?
Correct.
So, a lot of times people, because you and I work with a lot of different businesses, and we're going to get into that. And, sometimes people think they own the business, but they don't own the work that it
No.
requires to actually have the business grow. Because the business, in my opinion, I'd love your thought on this. Business is super easy until we add people, right? It's money in, money out equals something, right?
Right, right.
But a lot of people they don't get the money in thing, which is what you're talking about on you got to do what you got to do. And sometimes, and folks, those of you who are thinking about starting a business, please take this to heart because, you know, it's not always one of these things that, you come out of a job and you jump into your own business and you think because you think you can do it better, there's a lot more to it that you're going to have to do that you don't want to do, but it's part of what requires the business. The business doesn't care if you're tired. Business doesn't care if you're happy, sad, sick, healthy. It doesn't care. It's like a newborn child. It's just like
But
feed me, clothe me, love me. You know what I mean? Constantly on. And so a lot of people, when I listen to their podcast, they're like, oh, yeah, you can do this too. No, and not always if you're not prepared to do the work. And like you said, Marvin, you worked all weekend long. Well, maybe there was a wedding to go to, but you had to not go to that, right? That type of thing. So, what would when it comes to this? What would you say that was the percentage of time? And I know this is a difficult question, but over that period of owning that company, what was the percentage of time that you did things that you were just like, you know what? It's work, man. I just don't want to do this, but I had to do it anyways. It like 2%, 5%, 10, 20, more?
yeah, so I guess maybe I've got a little bit of. I'll give you kind of a long answer to that question, I guess. So the really short answer is because I owned it, zero,
Okay.
right? Because it was mine. So it's sort of like me asking you, what percentage of the time with your child did you do things that you really hated? Like,
Yeah.
my answer is zero. I mean, I don't want to change anybody else's kid's diaper, right? But
Right.
when I changed my kid's diaper, it was like, oh, sweetie, you've got a poopy diaper. Like,
Right.
somehow because it's yours, it's better. Now, having said that, did I enjoy unclogging the clogged up toilets? No. So I mean, it's real work. I get one thing I would say. So you hear this thing all the time. Are you working in your business or on your business, right? So I think one thing that business owners get wrong, especially new ones, is you've got to work in your business until you really, really understand it. Like you've got to do, in my opinion, every single function until you understand it.
Yep.
Once you understand it, if you're still doing it, that's when you're probably starting to do something wrong. And so what I did is every single thing that I ended up doing, I would ask myself, am I the only person in this building who can do this? And if I wasn't, I made sure somebody else was doing it once I
Mhm.
understood it. And so that's kind of this long answer to your question, but 2 years in, I was doing nothing that I didn't quote unquote enjoy because 100% of what I was doing was something that at least I believed I was the only person that could do it. Like closing the books. Technically, was I the only person who could close the books? No, but in my opinion, as a small business owner, if you're not closing your books every month, you're just leaving yourself vulnerable to all kinds of crazy. from embezzlement, through to just not really understanding how your business is running, not seeing the red flags of something going sideways. Um, and I, and I'd gotten to the point where, we were in a position on one business where I had enough bandwidth left over that we could go take over a struggling. Now, it was a very similar business, but I could go spend basically 90% of my time on that business because the other location was running great.
Mm-hmm.
So you should be trying to work yourself out of a job. And then, in my opinion, focusing on what your podcast is all about. In my opinion, the owner's number one job is to make sure there's business coming through the front door, whether that's being the salesperson or helping the sales team, whatever it is. And then your equally important job is to make sure that the team inside the building is going to execute with excellence on that business. Because you're going to help people build these great sales strategies, right? But if you don't retain that customer, you're just churning.
Yeah. Churn's expensive, but guys, we all know that, or most of us should, that it costs more to gain a new client than it does to have an existing client. And it costs you literally, in many cases, nothing to get a referral. And so, your profitability is much higher. I love what you said here, Marvin, because it's a really great point. You work in your business until you understand it, and then you work on the business. And a lot of people don't know when to make that shift, right? They make it too early. They hand off stuff and they're like, oh my gosh, it's not getting done the way I wanted it to, right? And it's like, well, there's no process around it because you didn't understand it in the first place, what you were doing. So you just kind of pushed it off. I see people do this with marketing companies all the time. They know nothing about marketing. They hire a marketing company. Marketing company comes in, does their thing. They can't close the leads. It's like, right. And it's like, okay, is it the marketing company or your sales team's not prepared to do this, right? And so, and then they go, oh, I don't know. And it's like, all right, well, that's what you're talking about. And that's an expensive lesson.
Right.
Folks, you always hear me talk about, sell on value, don't discount when you don't have to. But when you make an error like that, you're also really, it's kind of like a discount. It's kind of like you just lost a lot of money and it takes you a lot of sales to make up for that loss. So, so thank you for bringing that up. And I love that, close your own books because, you got to bring business in and you've got to then, build the team internally. And that's how you get the leverage out of the process. Let's fast forward. You're now with Rain Catchers, the name of the company, right?
Yes.
And you guys are business brokers and M&A firm nationally in the United
Yes.
States.
Yes.
And uh, I love your model because you got representation everywhere. I looked on the website and checked it out. And you and I both know that, and you've seen this, I suspect, way more than I have. People want to sell their company. They get to a place in life, it's either, I'm ready to sell the company or they're just whatever. Something happens. They want to sell the company. They're not prepared to sell the company. They dump the company off and they're losing sometimes millions or tens of millions of dollars in that company because it isn't set up right for the exit. Is that right? Or is it there other reason? That's been my experience.
Yeah, I think there are multiple reasons why small business owners don't capitalize fully in kind of that last step. So, um, one set of reasons is what you were referring to, which definitely has something to do with the business, right? Um, because there are definitely things inside the business, and we can sort of talk about these, that you can do to, increase the value. The other reason, though, is that the process of selling the business uh, it is flawed. Okay, and so what I mean by that, at Raincatcher, we what we did at Raincatcher, or what the folks who founded Raincatcher did, was they looked at the middle market. So that's, believe it or not, businesses with enterprise values over $100 million, right? So these are not quite big enough to be public typically, but bigger than the lower middle market. And what investment bankers in that part of the market do is they don't put a price on anything, right? They run an auction, a closed bid auction, where they go out to the interested parties, they give them all the information that they need, and they say, what do you think this asset, this company is worth? And they take bids. And then they work those bids among the interested parties until finally somebody emerges with the quote unquote best offer, right? And then the deal gets done with them. Well, I don't care whether you've been to your kids', third grade Christmas auction or whatever it is. What happens when you get any human being, when they get into that situation? Oh, I'll pay $47 for that ornament that was hand painted by the third grader, right? Sure,
Right.
we'd love to have that on our tree. Well, believe it or not, people who buy businesses are absolutely no different. And maybe for different reasons, but when you find out that something is available and it's a good fit for your organization, maybe you have strategic or synergistic reasons why you're willing to pay more than anybody else, or that your competitor's bidding for it, and if they get it, it's going to strengthen them relative to you, and so you've got to keep it out of their hands, kind of no matter what. There are all these. All right, and so if you don't run a process like that, you honestly have no idea what the market thinks your business is worth.
Mm.
You just take the first offer that comes through the door, and you think, great job, good deal, right? So that's what we do at Raincatcher, which is unusual. It's not unique, but it's not the norm in the lower middle market. And then the last reason is, I kind of I relate it to climbing Mount Everest. So Doug, let's say you and I, we decide to be the first bald pair to go climb Mount Everest, right? Or whatever it is, and we go off and we train, and what everyone around us is going to think is our goal is to get to the summit, right? We're climbing Mount Everest, so the goal must be to get to the summit. What do our families care about?
We come back safe.
And guess where everybody dies?
In the middle of the mountain.
On the way down.
On the way down. Oh, the way down. Okay.
On the way down, not on the way up. I mean, I'm not saying no one's ever died on the way up, but the vast majority of deaths are on the way down. It's the same way in a deal. Getting to the summit is getting a buyer engaged, signing a letter of intent, right? No deal dies getting to a letter of intent. That's not where they die. They die in due diligence. They die in the quality of earnings. They die in some legal thing that wasn't disclosed. They die because the financials as they were represented aren't the way the financials really are. You didn't pre-negotiate something in the purchase agreement, and now nobody can get on the same page. This is where deals die. And so that's really, investment bankers don't make their money finding a buyer, right? Investment bankers make their money, in my opinion, by running a process that gets you the best deal and the best buyer, right? And then in shepherding that deal through all the things that have to happen between we've agreed on a price and a set of terms and a letter of intent, and you've actually got the wire transfer in your bank account.
This my grandfather was a real estate broker, and this reminds me a lot of that type of transaction. You find somebody who's perfect for the house. The realtor's all excited, like, hey, we're going to have a sale, and all this go. But then appraisal doesn't work out, or, the buyer goes through, I don't know, death in their family or something like that. There's all kinds of factors.
All kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And so, I mean, I think for your listeners, the analogy to selling a house is really a pretty good one. Like there's a ton of similarities. If you're selling a business for, $10 million or $20 million, it's not dissimilar from selling a house, right? What I want to impress on people though is it is a lot more complicated. There are a lot more moving pieces. Um, and uh, well, I think most business owners are probably savvy enough to sell their own house.
Yeah.
Few business owners, and I say this with humility, are savvy enough to sell their own business, at least for the highest possible valuation, right?
Well, I think the thing also that plays into that is just the human dynamic. It's their business, right? They built it. They're so close to it they can't see some of the value that's within,
Right.
or they overestimate the value that the market outside is actually looking as the perceived value.
For sure. And or you get offended because someone calls your baby ugly. Like,
Right.
okay, sorry. So I talk to people frequently who kind of have a deal on the table, right? Someone's approached them and said, "Hey, we'd like to buy your company." Okay. And even if that's the deal you want to do, I still encourage people to be represented. There's a number of reasons why. Number one, it's more complicated than it looks, and so having someone who's been through it, um, and does it for a living is really really helpful. Like they know the ropes.
Mm.
Number two, deals need a bad guy, right? Deals need somebody to hate. And if you don't have somebody like me involved who can deliver the bad news, who can, be the lightning rod when there's conflict, who can be the guy that everybody hates at certain points in the deal, so that you can maintain your relationship with the buyer,
Yep.
uh, deals fall apart for very emotional reasons. And part of the job of somebody like me is to absorb a fair amount of that emotion so that the buyers and the sellers continue um, to maintain a good working relationship
I,
and
I love that, Marvin, because I'm forever telling people, look, there's two ROIs. There's a business ROI and a personal ROI. And
so
if you're going to be the let's just call it the perceived fall guy, the bad guy in the process, right? It's like, well, that's Marvin causing that challenge, right? It's not the buyer seller relationship naturally. It's the professionals that are coming in between. It's like when attorneys get involved sometimes with, I don't know, any case, right? It's like,
yeah.
right. So it's
Well,
a,
let's talk about attorneys real quick, just in this context, right? I love attorneys. I really do. Some of my best friends are attorneys. But keep in mind, in a transaction like this, the attorney's job is to minimize risk for their client, right?
yep.
So you've got a client on the buy, you've got an attorney on the buy side, you've got an attorney on the sell side. And their job is to make sure, if their success criteria is that their client walks away with zero risk, right? Well, both sides can't walk away with zero risk. There's risk in the transaction, and the risk has got to be shared between the parties, right?
Makes
But the
sense.
attorneys will, if you let them, quote unquote, you know, do their job, and they'll continue to fight and fight and fight for the best position for their client, which is very frequently the worst position for the other party. And someone's got to sort of mediate this in the middle and say, listen, guys, understand both perspectives, but we've got to find some common ground here because we can't have all the risk on one side of the table or the other. Well, if it's just two attorneys going at it and they're getting paid by the hour, I mean, God love them. The incentives are not aligned to come to an agreement,
Mm-hmm.
right? So anyway, I know it's very, very self-serving to say, get a representative involved, but I really do think that for what you're going to pay a representative, my view is that the way Raincatcher runs the process, right? Because we go out and get bids, and Doug, very frequently, we see 10 to 50, sometimes more percent increase in the value of the bids
Right.
as the process proceeds, right? So make it up. If you pay Raincatcher 7%, a 7% fee or a 6% fee, Well, if I increase the value of your business by 10%, you're money ahead just by running the process.
Yeah.
Much less if we actually facilitated getting a deal done where it would have fallen apart before. I mean, I talk to people all the time with broken deal stories. And
I
you,
I had one happen 4 times in a row, Marvin.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
And look, sometimes it's inevitable, but very frequently when you really dig in, it's like, you know what, that deal probably could have been saved.
Yeah.
Like that probably was a good deal that just had a bad process.
Well, and to that point, when the deal didn't go through on my end, it was I had no one involved in it. It was just myself and the buyer, right? And
Right.
so finance fell through one time on a buyer, that's why I kind of compared it to the real estate thing because that happened to me. It was like all of a sudden, this guy was ready to go on one deal, and his wife came up to him and says, "We're getting a divorce." It's like can't focus on this right now, right? So all kinds of things can happen. Um, in the we got a couple minutes left, and I want to ask this question: how much does EBITDA really matter in a transaction for a company?
Well, I don't think it's overstating the case to say that it's everything. So you'll see deals, in the Wall Street Journal or the cover of, your favorite business magazine where, they had no revenue or they had no profit, right? They were hemorrhaging cash and they still got $100 million for the company, right?
Right.
Or, they got paid some giant multiple of revenue or whatever.
Slack.
Okay.
Slack.
Yes. There's a reason why those deals make headlines.
Yep.
Yeah. They're really unusual. Okay. For
Sure.
all the rest of us mere mortals, the value of your business is some multiple of your EBITDA, plain and simple, right? Um, and so the more EBITDA you have, the more your company is worth. There's another thing that a lot of people don't understand, but there are kind of these zones of EBITDA where the multiple actually goes up. So if you have $500,000 in EBITDA, your company's worth between 2 and 5 times that. Okay. If you have $1.5 million in EBITDA, well, now the multiple goes sort of 3 to 6. All
Mm.
right. So a whole turn of EBITDA just appears out of thin air just because your company is bigger, right? Well, if you have $4.5 million in EBITDA, well, now the multiple is sort of 4 to 7. And again, I'm just giving averages and illustrating things. It depends on industry and all of that. But as you increase your EBITDA, the multiple increases as well, right? And then the other thing that people don't talk about is as you increase your EBITDA margin, right, which means your business is running more efficiently,
Yep.
and you've done more of the things inside of your business to, modernize it, to streamline it, to optimize it, whatever. Now you're starting to play within that range. So it's a reasonable question. Well, what makes the difference between a 3x and a 5x if my range is 3 to 6, right?
Right.
Well, it's those things that you've done inside the business and how you compare, right? So the range is industry dependent, but where you land in that range has a lot to do with how, and that's a whole other podcast, Doug, to talk about what the things that you do to make your business more attractive to buyers, right? But a really sort of rough proxy for that is what is your EBITDA margin percentage compared to other businesses in your industry, right? You can't compare between industries. I mean, if you run a hotel, your EBITDA margin is completely different than if you run a B2B SaaS company.
Right.
But where are you relative? How do you compare to other hotels, right? And if you're sort of towards the top of the range, then you can expect to get sort of a top of the range multiple as well. But EBITDA is everything, right? It really is in terms of how to value your business.
When should somebody they're thinking, I want to sell my business someday. When should they start preparing for that?
Well, so my opinion is you should always be ready to sell, right? If you're running your business in such a way that you could sell it tomorrow, I think that's the right answer. What does that mean? Okay. Um, it means make sure that you close your books every month, right? Make sure that you're not, look, every small business, not every, many small business owners run some personal expenses through their business, right?
Mhm.
Okay, I get that. And especially when you're a small business owner, it can be a little hard to kind of separate personal from business. But don't have a huge percentage of add backs, right? And especially don't be trying to run those through your taxes. Like I get trying to save money on taxes, but if you've got an eye to selling your business, those add backs at some level, at some point, there's some threshold where buyers just go, okay, I don't know, like that's just a red flag. Okay, um, have processes and procedures in place. Have a management team. Like have people who can. If you can, oh, here's another good limit. If you can't go on vacation for 2 weeks in your business run, figure out why and figure out how to fix that. Buyers love businesses that they can come into and they're not dependent on the owner, right? Um, but having said all of that, uh, don't think I can't sell my business just because some of those things aren't true. Because as it turns out, those are the opportunities for the buyer. Like if your business is absolutely perfect, other than increasing sales, I've got nothing to do to make the business more valuable. Like
Mhm.
you've perfected it, right? So, when there are things that are not fully optimized, well, that's the opportunity for the buyer to add some value, and there many buyers are looking for that, right? So, what I tell business owners who have this conversation with me is sell when you're ready to sell. When you're getting ready to sell, financials are number one, management team, team is number two. Um, Processes, procedures, technology optimization, you know, that's probably number three. And then, I mean, it goes without saying that without sales, there's no business, right? So yeah, I don't even put sales on the list. Like, it's just, you've got to be selling all the time. Everything in your business has got to be optimized around finding, and retaining customers. Um, but yeah, and then when you're ready, sell. And I guess the last thing I would say is I talk to a lot of business owners whose reason for selling is that they're burned out.
Yeah.
I strongly encourage don't get to that point because almost always what we discover under the covers in those businesses is they've started to falter, right? The burnout's been in place for long enough that the business is really not in very good shape.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to sell a business when you've got 2 or 3 years of declining financial performance. It just makes it harder,
Yeah.
right?
That's unless it's even on a fire sale, sometimes that's harder because people are like, hey, it's just trending down. It's like I might be buying something that's just a problem. But
Yeah.
going back to your one, two, threes, four, financials, team, well, what we would affectionately call the three Ps, policies, procedures, and um,
Processes.
in sales. I mean, if you take care of those four, the burnout will be less anyways, like you said. So that makes total sense. Marvin, how do people get a hold of you or Raincatcher or, maybe they're thinking, man, you know what? I need to talk to this guy.
Yeah, so you'll put my email address in the show notes. That is the easiest way. It's just marvin.karlow, last name's Karlow at raincatcher.com. So marvin.karlow at raincatcher.com. Um, and one of the things I do for, sort of anybody or offered anybody that I talk to is to sort of answer your number one question about your business, which is, if you're thinking about selling at least, which is, what might this be worth? We can do a, we can sign an NDA, we can get a small amount of financial information, and we can get a ballpark on what your business might be worth. And that's usually a pretty important factor for people in thinking about timing of selling their business.
Well,
So
thanks for being on here today. I also think a really great thing that you guys do is, though, you're really you're doing what marketing companies should do, what sales companies should do anytime they're going to roll out a new product or whatever. You're testing the market in that auction process to find out what the real value of the business is. And because it's the market who's going to determine what the value of the business is, whoever's
that's
going to pay for it,
exactly
right?
right.
So
Yeah. So let me just say one last thing then. So, and I tell this to all my clients. I'm in this business because I really truly love it. I really truly want to see business owners, have the same kind of success with their business that we had with ours on exit. I want them to get the highest possible value for their business from the market. But what I tell them is, listen, my success criteria is not whether or not we sell your business, right? My success criteria is that we put you in a position to make the best possible decision, right? And if the market comes back and tells us that your business is not worth what you need it to be, I'm in this for the long term. What we will get is some really clear data points on what needs to happen in order for it to be worth what you need it to be worth. Go off and solve those, come back, we'll do another round, and we'll get what you need for your business, right? So it's a long-term game, and my goal is the best possible outcome for the business owner, including, you decide not to sell this round, we'll do it again in a couple of years, and everybody will make more money.
fair enough. Marvin, thanks so much for being here on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks so much for bringing this great information. I really am grateful.
Doug, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for having me on, and I look forward to talking to some of your listeners.
Okay, you got a lot of notes? I do. So, when's the time to move from working in your business to on your business? Once you understand what you're working on in the business. I thought that was a great point that Marvin brought up. Once you understand it, you'll know how to offload it. You'll know what could be going sideways. You'll know what could be going really great, as long as you have accountability check-in sessions on that process. Too many people are just offloading it, thinking, oh, this person could do this. And they don't understand it themselves, and they're hoping the other person will actually understand it and be able to do it for them. Sometimes it works. Most times it does not work it's problematic. Let's put it that way. So make sure you understand it on the conceptual level of being able to hand it off. I mean, you wouldn't, I mean, think about it as your child, right? If you have a young child and you're going to have somebody that's, babysitting the child, let's say, right? And you're handing the child off for a couple hours so you can go out. And the babysitter calls you up and goes, geez, your child's doing this. You'll know why most of the time, because you know your child, right? So no, not too dissimilar to your business in that regard. Know what you're outsourcing before you actually outsource it. So know what the business is all about and the function of what you're going to do. Okay. When it comes to not leaving millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars on the table, make sure your financials are in order. Make sure your team is in order. Make sure that you have policies, procedures, you have accountability to the systems and processes working in your business, and that you have those systems working in your business. When you have those, you're going to be viewed as a much better company that somebody is going to want to come in and absorb, right? Now, of course, you've got to have sales. So, EBITDA is a, increase of the revenues, decrease of the expenses. You definitely got to have sales in the business. Or you're just going to get less for the business, or maybe somebody won't want to buy it. So, or they might want to buy it, but on a fire sale. So, if you're going to work all these years to build this business up, and remember, it's work, right? Whether you own it or not, it's still work. And you want to get to a place where you could be handing things off. Once you understand them, you want to be able to have the team running it. You want to have the financials in order so that they're very clean when people take a look at it, because that doesn't throw up any, red flags, so to speak. Have the systems, processes, widen out that EBITDA margin, and have sales, and you will get a higher multiple on the valuation of the company and higher offers in most cases. All right. Speaking of increasing that EBITDA multiple, that's what we do. We raise your revenues, we decrease your expenses, we give you a higher EBITDA multiple, and that results in a higher valuation, more cash flow you to work with, straighten out the processes and systems and all of that in between. And it lowers your stress level as a business owner. Please don't let your stress levels get to that place where you're starting to go into burnout, because it happens a lot faster than most people think. Once you're in burnout, it just keeps declining. If you want interested in doing that and you would like me as the person to talk to, reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. That's my email address. Doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. And as always, go out and sell something. Go out and sell a lot of it and play win, win, win. They win, you win, someone else wins preferably. Do not discount when you don't have to. And in most cases, you don't have to, as long as you're conveying the value perception of what they value. Remember, it's what they value, not what you value. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast saying, to your success.